Welcome to UPLEVEL, Real Health, Real Talk with Dr. Jenna Blasi. I'm Dr. Jenna. I spent years crafting ways to help women thrive, and I want to help you do the same. On this podcast, we dive deep into health at every level, focusing on the mind, the body, and the spirit. This is where real conversations meet transformational wellness. We'll be talking about all the things that truly matter, from nutrition and fitness to lifestyle, mindset, and personal development. Plus, the real deal on managing stress and navigating menopause. So if you're ready to elevate your health journey with authentic, transformative insights, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to UPLEVEL. I'm Dr. Jenna. We have wrapped up our March Metabolism month, and today I want to talk about strength training. Most women think about metabolism in terms of calories, diets, maybe even hormones, but one of the most powerful drivers of metabolic health has nothing to do with that at all. It's your muscle. And so I felt like this was a really great arc for us to go into after talking about metabolism from a lot of different aspects. And I touched on strength, but I'd like to go deeper because muscle is not just about strength or appearance. It is actually one of the most metabolically active tissues in the body. It helps regulate blood sugar. It supports your hormone balance. It protects bone density, and it plays a huge role in how we age. And yet, many women are still approaching exercise the same way they did in their 20s with lots of cardio and not as much strength training. So today I want to dive deep into why building and preserving muscle might be one of the most important things you can do for your metabolism, your longevity, your overall health. And I think many would argue it is the most important thing that you can do. But as you know, nothing is done in a vacuum. We have to do all of the things, but this is a big one. And if you've been following the podcast lately, you know we've been talking a bit about the GLP-1s, and we've been talking a lot about metabolic health. So that conversation about GLP-1 medications and how they fit into the bigger picture, maintaining your muscle is a huge part of that. So regardless of whether someone is using a peptide or any whatever method they're using, it is foundational to keep your muscle. Okay. So when we ask the question, like what actually supports metabolism, strength training is one of the most powerful answers to that. There's nothing wrong with cardio. Cardio is good for your cardiovascular health, right? Cardio has benefits, but many women are still trying to quote unquote fix their metabolism by eating less and doing more cardio. But the biggest lever that we have as we move into our 40s and 50s, and I would say for my younger listeners, start in your 30s because you are going to have a much easier, smoother perimenopause and menopause transition if you focus on strength, because that is the biggest lever. All right. So, and I love that this conversation has started to shift. I mean, this is one of the most, I think, important conversations that's happening in women's health right now, is it's finally shifting away from the scale and toward muscle, because muscle isn't just about appearance. It affects metabolism, insulin sensitivity, which remember goes down as we get older. Bone density goes down as our estrogen declines and as we get older. Brain health goes down potentially, and longevity. So it affects all of these things: metabolism, bone health, insulin sensitivity, brain health, longevity, and these things are shifting in midlife especially. So a main thing that I see is many women, despite everything I just told you, many women in midlife are doing the exact opposite of what their physiology needs. Like still, more cardio, less food, less strength. All right. So today we're going to focus on strength and why it's so powerful. Now let's revisit what happens around midlife, because there's several physiological changes that are occurring. Your estrogen is declining. Muscle loss sarcopenia is increased. Reduced insulin sensitivity. We're becoming more insulin resistant, which is not good for our hearts. It's not good for our midsection. It is not good for our liver. It's not good for anything. And we have a slower metabolic rate. I've mentioned this stat before, but women can lose 3 to 8% of muscle per decade after 30. So after 30, so again, younger listeners, get that strength in, get that muscle going now. This accelerates after menopause, and it's something like 15% after 70. This is without resistance training. Okay. This is the natural decline per decade. So we have to fight that. We have to work to offset that, I should say. Studies have shown and stats have shown that less than 30% of women strength train. So despite like all of this stuff, I mean, it's probably the algorithm on my feed is all about strength training, but less than 30% of women strength train. And I've seen numbers even lower than this. There was a big study that was done that was 1 in 5. 1 in 5 women are strength training. So this muscle loss that's happening kind of exponentially from 30 on is modifiable. That's the good news. It is modifiable, and muscle is incredibly responsive to stimulus even later in life. All right. So strength training is not just about aesthetics. I personally like to look strong, but it's about metabolic health and be strong. But I like the look of muscles personally, but it's about metabolic health. It's about independence, frailty. You are going down a slippery slope. If you enter the later years frail, sarcopenic, low muscle mass, that you hear like someone falls and breaks their hip and then that's it. They're often like within a year that we've lost them. So we don't want frailty. And so muscle, again, is not just a fitness goal. It's a metabolic organ. Metabolic health, independence, longevity, independence because you're strong. So the body composition shift that's happening, the scale becomes less meaningful in midlife, all right? Because a woman could have the same weight, but have less muscle, have more fat mass, have lower metabolic resilience, have lower metabolic flexibility. It's that skinny fat that we talked about. And strength training, on the flip side of that, improves fat oxidation, body composition, metabolic stability. So tying into that, go back and listen to that episode on weight loss versus metabolic health. All right. And that's the one disturbing thing that I'm seeing with people that are maybe misusing some of the tools that we have available. And Hollywood is representing like going back to this skinny, bony, frail look. And it concerns me as a physician from a health standpoint, not a judgment. I don't want to body shame any type of body, but this is about health. So there are real benefits to strength training for everybody, but we're talking about women, okay? So primarily, metabolism. Let's break these down. Metabolism. Muscle increases your resting metabolic rate, meaning you are burning more calories at rest. It improves your insulin sensitivity, which is incredibly important because as your estrogen declines, your insulin resistance will go up, period. So building muscle is going to help offset that and improve the insulin sensitivity. So it prevents as well that midlife fat gain, both from insulin resistance and the body composition changes from estrogen loss, etc. And many of the metabolic problems that people are trying to solve with medications, with peptides, which if you heard my last episode, like I am a fan, but muscle helps solve these naturally. And we can't do those things without muscle. Nothing is in a vacuum. We have to address all of these pieces that we talk about on my show, but muscle is a big one. Hormones. So many people come to me and say, I think my hormones are messed up. Strength training is going to help improve insulin signaling, reduce visceral fat, the dangerous fat that we start to develop in midlife, support estrogen metabolism, and improve your heart health. Bone health. So we got metabolism and hormones and bones. Resistance training increases your bone density. It reduces your fracture risk. It stimulates osteoblast activity, building bone. And this is especially important with osteopenia and osteoporosis risk, which if you're a postmenopausal woman, especially if you're not on hormone therapy, you're at an increased risk. When you lose muscle, you're at an increased risk. Okay? So brain health next. All right. Strength training improves BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So it's going to improve your cognition. It's going to improve your cognitive resilience. The cognitive decline conditions and dementia and even things like Parkinson's that we have some fear about as we get older, there's a lowering of BDNF. So strength training improves BDNF, cognitive resilience, and actually your mood and your stress response. Strength training is actually one of the best antidepressants and anti-aging tools that we have. Now, I would say exercise in general is mood boosting, but strength training is absolutely an anti-aging tool that should be started as young as possible. I have been, I'm trying to think what I did when I was younger, because I started with cardio for sure. When I've been teaching fitness classes since I was 18, and I used to teach at the YMCA, and I was teaching cardio, and there were like 80-year-olds in my class, and I was pretty intense. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to kill somebody. But I got into weight training as well, pretty young. I'm trying to think back, but not as seriously as I did in probably my 30s. I have to think about that. Anyway, start young, please. But it's never too late. We're going to talk about that soon too. It's never too late. So women often experience, when we look at the mood and the stress response, when we're building muscle, when we're getting strong, women often experience confidence, improved like feeling of capability, resilience. Like there's something powerful about discovering that your body is capable of more than you thought. Like there's nothing quite like, to me, there's nothing quite like a really good strength workout. I'm always often amazed like at how much my heart rate gets up when I'm lifting heavy. Okay, so brain health, strength and longevity. Strength and longevity. So this is a cool stat. Grip strength, you may have heard this, is strongly associated with mortality risk and longevity. Meaning that the stronger your grip is, it lowers your mortality risk, your death risk, and and it increases your longevity. So strength is linked with lower all-cause mortality, lower diabetes risk, better metabolic health, and we're going to break down like what this will look like practically. But a new study found that women who do strength training exercises just 2 to 3 days a week are more likely to live longer. 2 to 3 days a week of strength training are more likely to live longer and have a lower risk of death from heart disease compared to those women who don't strength train. So if those aren't great reasons, come on, I don't know what is. I don't know what is. So, and here's the thing. This is not about what so many women are doing, what I would say, quote unquote, wrong in midlife is you keep trying harder. You're grinding more. I got to do more. I got to do more. I got to eat less. I got to do more. And you're not seeing the results. And I get that. And that's why we have to look at all the pieces. And I've got tons of podcasts on all the other pieces. But strength is a huge one. I know some of you are out there lifting. And so you're not getting the results that you want. And so you've got to look at these other pieces that I discussed. But many of you are not strength training. Maybe you're afraid to get started. Maybe you're afraid of what? Let's talk about why many women avoid strength training, because it's crucial. And once you get comfortable with it, I don't know. I love it. But that's my bias. So here are 3 myths. Let's break down some myths that keep women out of the weight room. Number 1, I don't want to get bulky. I remember I used to teach a sculpt class in Scottsdale when I was in naturopathic medical school. And there were women who would just use 3 to 5 pound weights. Like that's all they would use the whole class. And this was not like a, let's do this for 10 minutes. This was a, let's go heavy. Like I was doing squats and lunges and anyway, and I was always trying to increase my strength. I didn't even fully know all of these pieces. I don't think, or I wasn't concerned with them because I was 30, right? But you should be concerned. But anyway, meaning interested, concerned as in interested, like I want to do this. But they didn't want to get bulky. And they were afraid if they went above their little 1, 2, 3 pound weights, they were going to get bulky. It takes such effort to put on serious muscle. All right. Most women actually struggle to build muscle. It takes years to build muscle, and you have to be so focused, dialed in on your macros, dialed in with your protein, dialed in on so many pieces. So that is not a real risk. All right. And you have control over that. So please don't let that be a reason that you're not strength training. Myth number 2, I am too old to start. Research shows that women in their 60s, 70s, and 80s can build muscle. I wish I could remember the name of that woman that you see that she started lifting when she was in her 50s. Her sister got her into it, and then her sister died. But she's like this bodybuilder. She's like 80 now, and you see pictures of her online, and she's flexing. And anyway, I wish I could remember her name. I'm sure some of you know who I'm talking about, but it's not too late. And remember, you're going to start losing more and more muscle from age 70 on. So if you haven't started, just start. And I know there's the intimidation factor, but so get a coach, get a trainer, find somebody that can help you just get in there and get comfortable and get going. All right. Myth number 3, walking is enough. Walking is fantastic. Huge fan of walking, but it does not build significant muscle and it does not sufficiently load bone. Right? There's different ways we have to work the body as we get older, and walking is not sufficient. I love yoga. Yoga's not sufficient. It's great for your body, but there's different forces that need to go on to the body, the bones, the muscles to build in the way that we want for bones and for muscle. So let's talk about what actually works. You don't have to do it all the time. 2 to 3 days a week. I would say 2 to 4 is ideal, but even, that study was 2 to 3. Women were living longer. So, you want to start slow, first of all. And, so start with 2 days a week. You don't want to just do once a week and then be sore and then not do it again for another week. And then you're never going to get over that hump, I don't think. And so 2 to 4 days a week, maybe 30 to 40 minute sessions. You do a warm up. You do intense strength training for 30 to 45 minutes, and then you do a cool down. It's good to focus on compound movements. So squats, deadlifts, push movements, pull movements, loaded carries, which are especially good for your grip strength as well. So these are going to recruit the most muscle and support your metabolism the best. But again, it doesn't have to be complex. You don't have to keep changing it up. It can be very simple. But the next key part is progressive overload. Okay, progressive overload. The muscle needs to have increasing challenge to adapt, right? We need to keep challenging the body, just like I believe we all need to keep being challenged to grow, right? We all inherently, nature's law is expansion and growth. And so muscles need increasing challenge to adapt. So this can look like heavier weights. This can look like more reps. This can look like more volume. I've shared with you all, I'm back to my weights. I'm happy to say I did my whole TRX program, and it was fantastic. And we were incorporating some weights in the program towards the end. And now I'm back working on power moves and heavy lifting again. And I needed that rest, not rest, right? I told you it was intense, but I needed that shift while I needed it. So I do want you to listen to your body. And that was still strength training. It was a lot of body weight, but now I'm getting back into heavy lifting. But the way that I did progressive overload, as I mentioned when I was doing TRX, was I always made sure I was doing more volume or maybe decreasing the rest, increasing the reps. But when we're talking weights, go heavier with the weights. It's nice to have an app that tracks, or, you can have a sheet of paper, but I think that's kind of a pain personally. But I remember I used to do these Bodhi workouts, or is it body? I don't know what they call it. But, and so I'd have these printouts where I would be logging my weight, but it's really nice in an app. And then you just make sure you're going heavier, go heavier, and keep challenge yourself. Some type of progressive overload. Right? Volume, weights, reps. And I do recommend working with a coach, because even briefly to set yourself up in a program or do a program that's structured by someone who has expertise, because willy-nilly programming will give you willy-nilly results. Willy-nilly. I don't know. I never have said that. I probably have sometimes said that, but that sounds... Anyway, garbage in, garbage out, right? I'm not saying any movement, any movement is good, but let's be intentional. And let's be focused. And so having a program that's thoughtful, that helps you go through progressive exercises and progressive overload. And there's lots out there that you can access. And I'm actually going to have my first guest speaker this month, and I'm going to bring our strength coach onto the show to talk about how do we actually do this. But there's a lot of different things out there that you can access if you don't have a one-on-one coach or access to a one-on-one coach at this time. I do want to say, as I always probably do, nutrition matters. All right. Muscle requires protein. Muscle requires protein. So we're looking at 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight for active women, which ends up being I usually tell people the rough estimate of a gram per body weight. So if you weigh 150, that's 150 grams of protein a day. And if you have a lot, like if you're very overweight and it's like feels like a really big amount of protein, you could be on the light, maybe go down to 0.8 rather than a gram. And then if you're doing heavy lifting, you might be on the higher side of that, but roughly per pound of body weight in grams. And a nice way to break that up is, 40 grams per meal, 30 to 40 grams per meal, 3 times a day. And then you add in 1 or 2 snacks, you're at 90 to 120 just in those meals, and 120 if you go to 40 grams, and then you can go from there. So gram per body weight, and then leucine. Leucine is a key trigger for muscle protein synthesis. And this is why I do whey protein typically over vegan proteins. I'm not saying you can't get what you need and put it together with a good quality vegan protein, but we need about 3 grams of leucine after workouts, especially to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. And typically a serving of whey protein has that 3 grams, and you need slightly different combinations for vegan ones. But you want to make sure you're getting the leucine in. So you want protein, you also want leucine, as that's a key trigger for muscle protein synthesis. And then recovery, like I'm talking about strength and add it in, but recovery, sleep, making sure you're fueling, not chronically under eating. This is super important. And this is why, this is why I switched to doing comprehensive programs in my practice, is because all of these things matter. And it can be a lot to try to figure out how to put it together and make sure you've got all of these pillars. So let me recap. And again, start with one thing, but if you're going to start with strength training, match it ideally with focusing on protein. I know that's 2 things technically, but they're 2 key things for longevity, for strength, for maximizing your results, and making sure your body's getting what it needs. So for most women, 2 to 4 sessions per week. Doesn't have to be fancy. And so if you love Pilates, if you love yoga, maybe you strength train Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you do Pilates and or yoga Tuesday, Thursday, gentle walks on the weekends. Like a rest day, by the way, it can be an active rest day. It could be a gentle walk, could be a gentle yoga. So it doesn't have to be like sitting on the couch all day, although if you feel like your body needs that, that's okay. But consistency matters more than complexity. So make it something you're going to do. Make it something simple enough for you to do so that you can be consistent. And if you struggle with consistency, go back and listen to my January podcasts, because I believe the January theme was identity-based consistency and success and discipline. So strength train, strength train, strength train at least twice a week. 2 to 3 is fine. Progressive overload, adequate protein, recovery, and sleep. Okay, that's your recipe. All right, you get the strength training in, you keep progressing, getting stronger, making sure you're getting enough protein, stimulating that muscle protein synthesis, and then making sure you're recovering and getting enough sleep. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. So this is really, if there was one thing I wish every woman understood, it's that strength training is not optional as we age. It is not optional as we age. It is foundational. Foundational. So if you're not there, get yourself there. And there's lots of different ways. Reach out, find somebody who can help you get started if you haven't, and if you've been doing it, but I wish I have to laugh about my willy-nilly, but if you've been doing it haphazardly, maybe that's a more professional way to say it, then get into a program that's actually structured. And ideally, I do think that a coach evaluating how you're moving so you can really make sure you're doing things correctly, because I've noticed when I taught fitness classes, I'm verbally correcting people and they are not changing what they're doing. So I'm like looking in the mirror, because I would face the mirror looking at them, or I'm facing them. Actually, more often I was facing them. Regardless, I'm looking at them and I would say, make sure and do this with your back and this. And I would be speaking to people who were doing it incorrectly and they didn't adjust because we don't see it. It's hard sometimes to know. You can look at yourself in the mirror and you may or may not understand the verbal cues. So working with someone who can actually assess your form and help you learn to do the movements correctly, I do strongly recommend that. But regardless of the route you take, strength is not optional as we age. If you take nothing away other than that, then I've partially done my job. And the goal of strength training is not just to look different. It absolutely will help with your body composition. It will help with your body composition, especially if you're releasing weight. If you are doing some type of program or some type of plan that is helping you release weight, it is foundational for you to make sure that you're maintaining your muscle and that you're losing fat, not muscle. So it is to build a body. All right, the goal with the muscle and the correct body composition, because we can be skinny fat. In fact, I read this one stat. I know I'm trying to close here. I read this one stat that showed like they had a group of women, and based on their BMI alone, they, I think like 30-something% of them were maybe diagnosed or labeled as overweight or obese. And then they did a DEXA scan, and it was like, I don't remember the stats, but I want to say it was at least like 20% more. It was over 50% or something like that, would be by definition based on their body composition, overweight or obese. So it's not just about your BMI. It is not just about the scale. It is about your body composition. BMI can give us some indication, but it's not accurate. Waist circumference is very, very important because that's that midlife thickening. And so that is very useful. Waist to hip ratio, but, it's the body composition. And the goal with muscle, all right, if you want improved body composition, like aesthetically speaking, great, but it's to build a body that supports energy, supports metabolism, and supports your health for decades to come. All right. Muscle is one of the most powerful investments we can make in our future health. So start now. Start now. And then I'm going to have Coach Monica on here and we're going to dive a little deeper. And just remember, like, strength and all of these investments of time and effort and sometimes finances into our wellness, into our health, it's a form of self-respect. It's a form of self-love. And it's a long-term investment that pays dividends. That's what an investment is. A cost is just an expense. An investment pays dividends, and your muscle will pay dividends. Promise you. So thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed, if you could tell, talking about this topic. And thank you so much. And I will see you next time. And we're going to discuss different aspects of this throughout the month. So take care. And thank you again for joining. And I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me on this episode of UPLEVEL, Real Health, Real Talk. I hope today's conversation inspired you to take the next step in your health journey, one that nourishes not just your body, but your mind and spirit as well. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you found value in today's episode, please leave a review. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep thriving. And remember, true wellness is a journey, and you are on the right path.